It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Hadj.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Hi. It's an absolute pleasure to have journeyed back down to Mornington this afternoon to speak to you about my strong interest in plant-based nutrition. I, up until about a year or two ago, was working in Mount Martha, which is a suburb just near Mornington, and you really couldn't have picked, despite the weather, trust me, you really picked the most beautiful location in Victoria to have this conference here today. I am really grateful to Michael and his family for embracing the concept of having me speak about plant-based nutrition. I am very passionate about it because it works. I'm very passionate about it because I've embraced it for my own health reasons, and I've, determined that it's something that I can't just sort of sit on my hands and just ignore. I need to get the message out. And I've certainly had the pleasure in using it in the clinical setting with a lot of my patients with absolutely extraordinary results. Extraordinary because they are uncommon, but really unextraordinary because they are very logical and very expected when we understand the science. And I am grateful to a lot of my colleagues in the United States, who I will mention at the end of this talk, who have been instrumental in paving the way for people like myself to very easily just come in and embrace plant-based nutrition. And we'll talk a bit about them. So what I would like to talk to you about today, and please, I'm happy for you guys to ask questions during the presentation. It goes for about 30 minutes, but if you would like to, we can hold off and we'll have a question and answer session at the conclusion of the talk. So I'm going to talk about a problem that we've got at the moment with health. Something's not working. Because we're supposed to live in the most wonderful country on the planet, we're supposed to have access to the best health system, but we're seeing crippling rates of diabetes and obesity and heart disease plague the community. Something's gone wrong. We'll look at what are the concepts behind the disease, what are the concepts that drive inflammation. We'll look at food as medicine and solutions. And we'll try and keep it as lighthearted as I can, and there won't be too much science. But in terms of, starting, we need to sort of also consider new ways of thinking. We need to consider oatmeal over obesity. We need to consider treats versus treatments and peas versus pills. In other words, we're considering a whole new fresh approach to how we treat disease. We always should start, therefore, with the past. And who said it better? None other than Hippocrates, who said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Wise, wise words from a wonderful man. And certainly in looking forward to the future, as Carl Sagan once said beautifully, as a historical perspective, you have to know the past to understand the present. And we look back and look at what successful people have done in life, and we try and embody what they've done. And when we look at groups and communities who have embraced a plant-based way of life, all large successful populations who have flourished have done so from plants. They've done so from living off the earth, living off the wheat, for example, in Egypt, living off potatoes in the Aztec Empire. Okay, it's been plants, and it's been the plant nutrition which has fueled these civilizations. In fact, there's a lot of good evidence to suggest that, in fact, it's the capacity of the neocortex, which is a layer of the brain, which is somewhat responsible for human beings being as intelligent as we are, which had its sort of etiology in starch. And as we sort of embrace starch and we embrace the idea of eating plants, so too did our sugar levels increase in a good way, which fueled the development of the neocortex. We see that plant-based populations are amongst the longest living and healthiest on the planet. Some of you may have heard of a concept called the blue zones. Has anyone heard of the blue zones? The blue zones are an area across the world where there are indications of populations living almost disease-free, living very, very comfortably from a perspective of their health burden. They almost all follow a vegetarian, if not a vegan diet. They live well into their 90s, sometimes into their hundreds. These are sporadic populations dispersed through the earth which have no association with each other besides the fact of their environmental determination, that is, the determinant being their diet, being what they eat. Genetically, there's really no difference between me and someone who was living 10, 20,000 years ago. So there is no difference between, say, someone living in the blue zones in the United States and, say, Okinawa, the Okinawan Japanese, who are noted for their longevity. Genetically, we are all identical, but something has gone wrong. Something has gone wrong because it's not just genetics, which determines where we end up, determines where we go onto the operating table. It's what we've done during our lifetime and putting things into our mouth. And that's because Western diets and the eating habits have changed dramatically in the last 50 years. And it's always interesting to look back at footage from, say, the 20s and 30s, and you see people being very thin. You see people being very active. And this isn't because there was famine. This isn't because they didn't have enough to eat. It is just because they did well.
Order your pizza.
Now that was planned precisely for this talk, wasn't it? That's right. So even though you're getting pressured to have 30% off your Domino's pizzas, don't let them knock you over, and in fact, you stay true to what you believe, okay?
Click on order now, quick.
Let's order it now, that's right. Now, I'm hoping that prior to coming in here, I was responsible for you guys having a plant-based meal, and I'm hoping that it actually turned out to be not just tofu and lettuce. Was it nice?
Yeah.
It was great. It was great. Because we have so much actual variation in what we eat. We just don't eat lettuce and carrots and tofu. And I'll talk about some of the meals that I make myself. Until I went vegan, I was unable to boil water. Now I'm able to cook quite competently, at least according to my girlfriend. And so therefore, you'll see that it's not just about so much a commitment to, I guess, sacrificing your taste buds. In fact, you actually get to still maintain having delicious food every day without the need for a nasty Domino's. So, with these changes, chronic disabling diseases have flourished. They have absolutely taken over our life. With these Western diets that have now implemented themselves and entrenched themselves, we are seeing disabling diseases. And what are the disabling diseases? The disabling diseases are the chronic diseases of the Western world. They are the diabetes, the type 2, heart disease, hypertension, obesity, and digestive issues. It's so, I guess, surprising to me when I first started working in general practice, and I would ask people about digestion, and I would say, tell me about your bowels. Tell me about how often you go to the bathroom. And they wouldn't confess that unless I asked them about it, but they all have problems. And some people would even say to me, oh, look, I don't actually even go to the bathroom maybe 2 or 3 times a week at the most. And yet I had people who follow a plant-based vegan diet, high fibre intake, going 2 or 3 times a day, which is really where we should be trying to aim as much as possible to increase our fibre intake. Why do we see that these are, I guess, so commonly seen as the typical symptoms or the history of a patient with disease? And that's very simple. That's because each of those conditions have their genesis in the standard American Western diet. Okay, so they have their genesis in the standard American Western diet. That's where this actually has its branch from. Now, when I was working at the Austin Hospital, which is a hospital up in the city here in Melbourne, and I'd go down to the emergency department and I'd see patients who were coming in for that day, and I'd always take a medical history. And one of the aspects of the medical history is the past medical history. They were coming in with chest pain. They were coming in with significant infective issues like an infective, a chest infection on the background of already major lung pathology. And I would always ask them, tell me about your past medical history. And they almost always had these in their past medical history. I never saw a patient come in with angina, that is chest pain, chest discomfort. And yet they told me I'm on a whole food plant-based vegan diet and I'm healthy and I'm fit and active. It doesn't work that way. These are the symptoms and the signs, and they are disabling. Absolutely they are. They are food poisoning. It's what we are all suffering from. But it's not the food poisoning that we are used to. It's not bali-bali. It's not that quick infective food poisoning that we think of. It's something a lot more clandestine, slow. It sort of evolves itself over time, and it starts in our infancy when we're young children, and then it develops as teenagers and develops as adults, and then we see the effects at at the nth degree, that is in our elderly years, where our bodies can no longer fight or cope with this spot fire that gets set up in our body. We get little spot fires of inflammation that just slowly drive the disease process. It goes into our heart and it drives heart disease. It starts to block those vessels, wears down the body slowly but surely. It's developed because of a reliance on processed foods, animal products, this quick fix approach. It's okay, I've got high cholesterol, no big deal, I'll go and get a medication because there's a medication for everything and everyone. Processed foods. Processed foods, for example, when I say to you, if you want to go and use olive oil, that's a processed food versus using olives, okay? It's where you have taken a raw ingredient, okay, and you have stripped it of all the nutrients, stripped it of maybe all the goodies that come with it, and you've had maybe just a little bit of the fat or a little bit of the sugar left over. And then what you do is you put all the little bits of sugar and little bits of fat together and you make a jar of olive oil or a can of Coke. And then you give that to someone. And as I've calculated in the past, it takes around about 40 olives to make 1 teaspoon of olive oil. So if I said to you, pour 1 teaspoon of olive oil onto your salad, you wouldn't feel it. You wouldn't feel that volume going into your stomach. But it's an enormous amount of energy. Yeah. If I said to you, eat 40 olives, you could probably eat 10, and that would be about it, because it comes with the fibre, the nutrients, all those great things that go with it. Yes, it has a bit of the fat, but that's tied up in the actual raw food itself and slowly gets absorbed over time. So we try and push away from this reliance on processed foods. But what does it do when we have this diet, when we're having the diet of the quick fix? It feeds the mechanisms of chronic disease, inflammation and morbidity. Okay? It's killing us. There's no simple way of talking about it. It is killing us. It provides our bodies with high amounts of cholesterol, saturated fat, and little or no fibre. Cholesterol goes straight into the arteries. It goes straight into the muscles. Cholesterol is actually, believe it or not, yes, you heard it here from a doctor, cholesterol is a good thing. Why am I saying it's a good thing? Well, your liver makes cholesterol. Your liver makes cholesterol because it's sort of the cornerstone of a lot of our hormones. And our hormones get secreted, and they are like emails that get sent all through the body, communicating with different parts of the body. So the liver wants to communicate with the kidneys, it'll send an email or a hormone. But cholesterol forms the backbone of that. But we make enough. We don't need anything from outside. It's when we go and consume the dead animal flesh that contains all the cholesterol in it that our body says, well, you know what, I don't know what you were living in. We could be in an ice age tomorrow. We could certainly be in a famine. I'm going to hold on to this cholesterol because it's great stuff and I need it. And so it says, I don't know where to store it. So it stores it into our livers, into our muscles, and into our vessels. And over time, those vessels become clogged. And thus, we set up this slow, meandering process of disease. Saturated fat, the same thing, and little or no fibre. We don't have fibre in our food. Fibre is sugar. It's a carbohydrate. It's like the glucose that we have when we drink soft drinks and so forth, or eat fruits like fructose. But it's a particular type of sugar that can't be broken down. And it's a particular type of sugar that just stays in the gut. And some of our bacteria thrive on that for good health reasons. But generally it provides bulk and it helps the digestive tract work properly. It helps the muscles in the digestive tract work properly as well. We clean out our bodies quite regularly. Food poisoning, as I said, we are all suffering from this. So what is the result of all this suffering? The result is a very subtle, clandestine poisoning that seeps into our lives, slowly disabling our right to feel healthy, happy, safe, and independent. We don't feel healthy anymore. We feel tired, withdrawn, we feel sick. We're not happy because of the medication we're on. We're not happy because of mum's heart attack. We're not happy because of the brother's illnesses or so forth. We have this social impact where we get affected by this. We don't feel safe anymore. There's nothing worse than when you don't feel safe. And the best way to not feel safe is to feel your life or your livelihood is threatened. And especially when you are, I guess, being led by a disease. You lose your independence. What are our treatment options? As I've said, we've developed a dependency on pills and potions rather than peas and pumpkin. Now, this was taken about a year ago in my kitchen, and I went out and I bought all these foods, and I took a video, but I also took photos of it. And these are the whole foods that I'm talking about. The fruits, okay, all the leafy green vegetables, which are full of fibre and nutrients, and I'll talk about them in a second. All the great cruciferous vegetables like cauliflower, and yes, a bit of flavouring with balsamic vinegar. If you want to put sugar and cinnamon like I do on my oats, you can do that. It's not a bad thing. This was taken here in Mornington, actually, at Benton Square. This was the local chemist, and I'm walking past one day and I saw this, and it was the same day I had this shopping. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, that is the treatment where we should really be getting that. Striking. So type 2 diabetes, I want to talk about type 2 diabetes and heart disease because they're really common, and I think it's important to understand what drives diabetes so you understand how it works and why I get the results I do. In fact, it was only 2 weeks ago I cured someone of type 2 diabetes, and I'll talk about her case at the end. So what's it all about? The cells become clogged and cannot take up sugar without the help of medication. This is a cell, okay? What you're seeing here in this room is a cell. The door opens and sugar comes in every so often. And in fact, if you think about the sugar save being the water and the lollies here, you need to survive, so you need some energy, so you come and get the lollies. And then we'll burn it all up and they bring in more lollies. But if we make rubbish, if we put cholesterol and saturated fat all over the floor and we block the door, they can't get in. We can't get an influx of people, we can't get anything happening in the cell. The cell becomes clogged. And so in that case, the sugar stays outside and sugar levels rise, and the body hates sugar. When sugar runs through the hallways, it's like kids at primary school running through the hallways when they should be in class. The teachers hate that. And they tell little Johnny to get back into class. They don't like school kids running around through the hallway. Well, your body doesn't like sugar running around our hallway, the arteries. It sets up inflammation, it annoys the vessels, it drives disease. So we have this intramyocellular lipids. That is basically a fancy word for fat in the muscle cell fat, okay? That gets stored in the cell breaks down. We need to get henchmen or diabetic medication to come and force the door open and push more stuff in. High sugar loads inflame vascular disease and the end organs, okay? The toes, the kidneys, the heart, the brain. And we result in amputations, heart disease, strokes, blindness, and high blood pressure. There is a very logical mechanism behind this. Rates are skyrocketing. Look at this. In 1970 in China, diabetes had a prevalence, type 2 I should clarify. Type 2 diabetes had a prevalence of 1%. 1%. Then something happened in 1970. Macca's came in and started investing in Beijing and China and Shanghai, because suddenly the middle class went from a small hairline part of society to this wide area of the population, and people had disposable income. And people no longer relied on the traditional Asian starch, that is rice. They went for the fast food. And we now see in 2010, 15%. 15%. That is not genetics. That is not anything other than an environmental cause has somehow mucked up that flow, and that is the diet. Now, China shouldn't be proud of that, but not to be outdone, I'm sure Trump also wants to feel that he is better than China when it comes to diabetes. But let's therefore have a look at the United States. This is going back by memory into the early 90s. And the United States, give them the credit, have very good statistical information about diabetes. And we're going to flip through now over the years until around about 2010 of what the prevalence of diabetes has been. And obviously as the colour gets darker, the more population suffer from disease. He's happy with that, it looks pretty good. Watch this. The colours get darker. He's questioning it. He's not happy. That is where, sorry, let me go back. That is where we ended up. That's scary. That shows you it's like a spreading disease process. It's spreading because the populations have become more and more dependent on fast food. less dependent on the healthy aspects of lifestyle, such as exercise and eating well. That's not genetics. That's simply lifestyle. Okay, how has it happened? What's the cause? Well, is it the genes? No, we talked about that. Is it the environment? Is it because of coal-powered fire stations? Is it because of something? No, it's not. It's not the environment per se. Is it because of sugary drinks? No. It's not so much the sugary drinks, okay, that are driving this process. It's the raw foods that we are eating that are containing, remember, that cholesterol, the sugars, the fats that are containing all those foods that are flooding our cells. As Michael Clapper, a wonderful American physician, says, it's the food. It's always been the food. He puts that plaque above his wall when he sees his patients. And Dr. Clapper came to Australia only last year, and I had the pleasure of being able to meet him. He was very influential in convincing me of the benefits of a whole food, plant-based vegan diet, and I credit him for where I am today. Let's have a look at Dr. Michael Greger. Dr. Michael Greger is also a physician, and Dr. Michael Greger says the primary reason diseases tend to run in the families may be that diets tend to run in families too. Yes, mum had high blood pressure. Oh yes, I've had that in my family for years. Dad's had heart disease. That's just a family thing. No, it's not, because you eat just like what your family have eaten in the past. Now, there have been some interesting case studies where people have been able to live into their 80s and 90s, and yet their kids have failed and have only been able to live in their 60s and 70s. And none more so than the Japanese who left usually around World War II from Japan, went to Hawaii. And those that left Japan still stayed on the same diet and lived into their 80s and 90s. But it was their children who were born in Hawaii, in America, and grew up on a fast food diet were plagued with disease. And it showed so powerfully that yes, genes can protect you, genes can be good, but it also depends on what you eat. Type 2 diabetes can be prevented, arrested, and even reversed with a healthy enough diet. I never got taught this. I would never have believed it. I mean, once you had diabetes, you had diabetes. You just have to manage it with medication, keep people alive. Because medication works. It does work. It keeps you alive. I wouldn't say it's a solution, but it does work. It gives you extra years, and it certainly does help your morbidity and mortality. But it's not a solution when the solution is so obvious and so easy. We have moved from our focus from this, Italian kale, spinach, rhubarb, and look at this beautiful array of all these green leafy vegetables. What are they? They are exposed to the sun. They are in the sun all day. They don't have suntan cream like you and I, but what they do have are wonderful mechanisms of defense against UV radiation, antioxidants. They're in the sun all day, so they have capacity to deal with the insults of the world. And when we consume them, we flood ourselves with fiber, which our body loves, but we flood ourselves with those antioxidants, and they drip all through our body, all through our organ, and they are like water being poured onto a flame. They cool the processes of inflammation. They are life forces. They are wonderful, wonderful things to have. I took this at the exhibition centre about a year or two ago. It was the Melbourne International Garden Show, and it was fascinating because as I turned around, I saw this. Super dogs just by the side of the building and the people lining up. And I looked at that and I thought, they're having a product which is known to cause cancer. A product that will make them unwell, that will make them feel constipated, that won't give them the energy that they need. How many times have we had a huge big meat pizza and then 2 hours later felt hungry again? It's because our body has been flooded with fats, oils and salts, and that's gone straight into the organs, straight into the storage organs and mucked up our cells. But then the body has said, where's the sugar? Where's the water? I haven't got any. I'm going to make you feel hungry again. And we drive our appetites. And we get into this habit of eating these foods. Whereas if I have a massive bowl of mashed potato at 8 o'clock in the morning, huge, huge big bowl, 80% of it being water, the rest of it being healthy, complex sugars and fats, I don't feel hungry until 1 o'clock. That's the science. That's what supports it. It's a shame to see this was here. Let's look quickly at heart disease and vascular disease, atherosclerosis, and that means the actual stenosis of the vessels closing over, they're becoming clogged. It's a hot cauldron of inflammation. That word again, inflammation. Inflammation in the blood vessels, which brings about a clogging and the stiffness leading to heart attacks, strokes, end organ disease and high blood pressure. Now by end organ disease, I'm talking about toes. The little vessels that go to the end of the toe, the little vessels that go to the kidney. One of my favourite organs, the most remarkable organ. I love the kidney. I love renal medicine. And those little vessels get blocked and the organ starts to die. Driving factors are smoking, a high-fat protein diet, high-protein diet. Don't do the keto diet. Don't do it. In the New England Journal of Medicine, only recently, the most prestigious medical journal, we showed why the keto diet is deadly, why it drives heart attacks, why it drives fatigue and burnout. It'll make you lose weight. One of the best ways to lose weight is just not to eat. But if you want to eat and you want to have high-fat protein diets, you want to have animal-based proteins, it will make you lose weight. It will starve you. And for a while you might feel okay, but it will drive disease. And it will drive it in the worst way possible. We know this now. We know it. The standard American diet is really the cause of it all. Avoiding a plaque buildup in your blood vessels and lowering your risk of heart disease by eating a plant-based diet. A plant-based diet is this, and as you go to a vegetarian and to a meat eater, and you're saying, Anthony, you can't just show us a cartoon. The cartoon isn't good enough evidence, and I agree with you. So let's actually look at some raw data. This is a vessel called the aorta. And I want you to see this vessel here going down through the heart. So this vessel goes into the heart and it runs down the heart, part of the coronary angiogram. Now, this is normal. That looks like a nice big, same width all the way along that tube. That's the artery. This is what it was before a patient went plant-based. This patient was setting himself up for a heart disease. The reason why it looks all squiggly is because that vessel is still the same thickness here, but the dye no longer runs along the border. It gets these plaques here that are poking out into the middle of the vessel. They're slowly suffocating the vessel. And it wouldn't be long until a little bit rips off, goes down, blocks suddenly, and the patient dies of a sudden heart attack. The patient went plant-based for 32 months. Just 32 months. Changed their entire diet. They switched off that process. And just like today, there'll be a cleaner who will come in here tonight and clean up. There is a cleaner going on in your cells, believe it or not. I wish I could show you the paper. There's a wonderful paper talking about the way the body cleans up its cells. And if you stop 3 times a day putting the bad foods into your diet, your cleaner gets to work. Day 1 starts to get rid of a bit of the cholesterol. Day 2 starts to get rid of a bit of the saturated fat. And then round about sometime in the future, it starts to clear the door. And the sugar levels suddenly start to improve. The cells that line the vessels start to improve as well. They don't become as stiff and high pressured, so the blood pressure falls. You start to repair yourself. Just like when you were young and you'd fall over and you'd graze your knee, and within 3 or 4 days the skin cells had repaired themselves. Your body's never lost that wonderful capacity to actually heal. Never. And it doesn't matter whether you start plant-based when you're a teenager, when you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, or 90. You will start the process of reversal. That is significant. Because even on a cholesterol lowering medication, which this patient wasn't on, you don't actually reverse it. You just slow it down. Let's look at another patient. Same thing. I don't want you to get too worried about the fact that it looks like it's very complex. What I want you to know is that that is the aftermath of someone who's been on a plant-based diet, and that is before. You can see how that looks nice and the same width along the way the artery runs along the heart. Here, it's quite stenosed. And this is a vessel called the anterior descending artery in the heart. That's powerful. That to a medical student or to a doctor like me is eye-opening. And it was led by this man, Caldwell Esselstyn. He published that work. He published those angiograms. And he is a surgeon who became plant-based. And as a plant-based physician, he published a few papers which have been groundbreaking. Some people think that plant-based whole foods diet is extreme. 500,000 people a year will have their chests opened up and a vein taken from their leg and sewn into their coronary artery. Some people would call that extreme, and I certainly would. Why would I want to take out a vessel from my leg, attach one part here, and then attach the other part here, so that we bypass that vessel? I'm going to set up issues in my vein. I'm not going to do anything for that vessel, but I'm not going to change the way I eat. And eventually, the vein will get blocked. That's extreme. To saw open the chest and have to do that, all because people can't just eat a better way at night, at breakfast, lunch and tea. Dr. Kim Williams is the immediate past president of the American College of Cardiology. He was out in Australia recently, a wonderful man. There are two kinds of cardiologists, vegans and those who haven't read the data. It's so true, it really is. I've got a great friend of mine who's a cardiologist, and she's really embracing veganism, whole food plant-based diet, I should say, plant-based nutrition, because she's paying attention to the data. Dr. Dean Ornish, I don't understand why asking people to eat a well-balanced plant-based diet is considered drastic, while it's medically conservative to cut people open and put them on cholesterol-lowering drugs for the rest of their lives. That's awful. It's awful. Dr. Dean Ornish published a wonderful study in 1998 which showed that using meditation, a bit of exercise and a vegetarian diet, people did much better. And in 2003 at the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne, as a young medical student, I did a trial on 20 patients who were undergoing heart surgery. I popped them on a bit of meditation, a bit of music therapy, and it was all based on his research. And that's what sort of kept me on the idea of looking for new novel ways of trying to unburden ourselves from the chronic diseases. Cellular respiration. Let's talk a little bit about cellular respiration, because this is going to now tie in everything. Follow me here. I'm only joking, guys. It's okay. Let's make it a bit easier. This is a photo taken at my property. This is a fire, and that is wood. Follow? Yes? Good. Now, what do you see when you stand next to a fire? You have heat. You have water vapor. That is sugar. I want you to think of the fire or the wood as being sugar. The carbohydrate, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms are all bonded together. They get ripped apart, and all the energy that is in those bonds gets released as heat. And the water gets liberated as water vapor, and we feel that heat. Now, if there was a way that at the very moment that they broke apart, I could capture that energy, well, that's exactly what your cell does. Every time you eat sugar, every time you're eating carbohydrate, glycolysis, the breakdown of glycogen, the breakdown of glucose, sugar. Don't get too crept up by this, okay? Here is our piece of wood. Our piece of wood gets chopped in half and it releases a bit of fire, ATP. ATP is the energy, the batteries of our cells. And then it goes further into the cell and through a whole complex process. And I wrote a thesis on these little great guys here, called the respiratory chain in the mitochondria. But as it's breaking apart the wood, snapping it, the potatoes, the pumpkin, the corn, the sugars, we're not letting that radiate as heat. We're capturing it in a beautiful chemical reaction, and we're turning it into batteries. And those batteries are then running off. And right, Anthony wants to contract his biceps muscle, so I need 10 batteries for that. It'll use 10 batteries. And that is the process of how we take sugar, complex carbohydrates, and we get the batteries from them. That's the natural fuel supply of our body. Our body is designed to break down sugar. It's an okay thing. Bread, carbohydrate. Sugar, potatoes, carbohydrate. Pumpkin, carbohydrate. It's good stuff to eat. Don't get scared about it. So what's a whole foods plant-based diet? What am I actually talking about? Now, this is from Soulful Vegan Food. It's a fully 100% vegan restaurant here in Mornington, in Main Street. And I got them to cater a dinner for me a little while back where I practiced, where I was speaking to the doctors about this. And that's my stethoscope around it as a heart. And at the heart, we should really have a whole foods plant-based diet. It's a diet which is devoid of animal products. It's a diet which is high in complex carbohydrates, the starchy foods, your breads, your pumpkin, your corn, potatoes. Oils, it's devoid of oils and animal protein. It's high in fibre and antioxidants. Remember, that doesn't have much energy. I could give you kilograms of lettuce and you wouldn't have much energy. You wouldn't feel anything from it. But you'd feel full because of the fibre. But you'd be weak because you wouldn't have any sugar. You wouldn't have anything to produce batteries. But you get fibre and you get antioxidants. Why? Because remember, our fruit and our plants are exposed to the sun. They've got protective mechanisms. It's carbohydrate, it's protein, it's fat. Carbs fuel the body. Potatoes, corn, wheat, pumpkin. Protein, amino acids, they are the building blocks of the cell. Lentils, chickpeas, legumes, beans. That's where we get our protein from. The fat is okay. Fat is a good thing. Good fats like omega-3s, they help to build the cell walls. They are involved in vitamin synthesis, cholesterol synthesis, okay, and general cell health. If we don't want this wall to fall down, we want to have bricks. We want to have strong bricks in the wall. We want to have strong fats in our cells. But omega-3 is not the fat that you find in Macca's, in olive oil, in saturated fat. That's a different type of omega. That is a different type of structural fat molecule, and that kills us. That doesn't go to our walls. That goes onto the floor of the room, of the cell. That's what blocks things. That's what drives disease. Filling up on a plant-based diet. We're aiming to get legumes, as I said to you, vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. These are the types of foods we should be getting into our diet. It's not hard to create wonderful meals with that as a backdrop. It looks appealing. It looks better than seeing a dead animal carcass covered in blood. That's colourful. It's appealing to us. We like the taste of bread. We like the taste of potatoes. We love broccolis and bananas and beans and antichokes. We like the idea of boosting our gut bacteria. They are in symbiosis. They are in partnership with us in our lower gut. Remember that fibre that we can't digest, they love to digest it. They secrete our serotonin, our happy hormone. Is it any surprise why patients who I put on a whole food plant-based diet, or at least a vegan diet, why they come back and say to me, I don't feel as low or depressed as usual. Now, there's probably some complex thing with them going to the bathroom and feeling healthier and feeling well, but I'm sure as we feed the healthy bacteria in our guts, we are also helping our happy hormones. Okay? I'm sure these slides will all be available for you anyway at the end. Benefits of a plant-based diet. I've seen this. This is why I'm so confident in saying this to you. Massive weight loss. Normalising, not so much a lowering of blood pressure, but normalising it. I can put you on medication and I will keep lowering your blood pressure until you fall over. But if I put you on a plant-based diet, you will normalise it. You won't go too low, so as you fall over, but you won't be high. You'll be normal. Better sugar control. Reversal of vascular disease. We've seen this. More energy, more of those batteries. Better sleep, better digestion, less fatigue, less sweating. You remove the medications and we improve your mental health. It's so obvious, and it's just simply by eating better 3 times a day. You saw this photo. This is the Whole Foods plant-based picture. This was, again, a photo that I took in my kitchen, and I didn't know what to do with this. So who do you call? And I'm probably showing my age here. Who do you call when you don't know what to do with that? You call MacGyver. And so MacGyver came along and he worked his magic, he used some vinegar, and he created vegan sausage rolls. Okay? They are absolutely delicious. Okay? And they are tasty with anything you want to put on it. Sugar, do whatever you want. But it's so easy to make wonderful, wholesome food. And those sausage rolls have all those wonderful macro and micronutrients in them. They have all that great sugar, fat, all those wonderful products you just saw, got emulsified up and into the sausage roll. This is a plant-based meal. Gnocchi and a tomato sauce with a mushroom mince ball with some sugar, with some greens. A kimchi bowl, oats, chia seeds and fruits, a vegan yogurt. Okay, here, vegan pancakes. Vegan eggs from Matcha Milk Bar in St Kilda, okay, with tempeh and sweet potato. I made this only a week ago, and it was a basil pesto. I used basil, sugar, basil, garlic, lemon juice, a bit of tofu, lemon, and pine nuts. minced it all together, and I had a basil pesto, and we put it on our sauce for our dinner, and we both loved it. It's so easy, it's so delicious. This is gnocchi, potato pumpkin gnocchi, with some glazed Brussels sprouts and mushroom mince that has a beautiful, delicious tomato flavour like it's meat. Okay, more foods. This is not tofu and lettuce, this is the kind of foods that we should be eating. Now, vegan doctors, do they exist? Are they just hippies? Well, look, this guy's a bit of a hippie. I wouldn't trust him, okay? Don't trust him as far as you can throw, okay? But I did a Facebook Live question and answer session a little while back, and the reason I did that is for the same reason I'm doing it today. We are spreading a message. And the message we're trying to spread is that you don't have to be burdened with the health condition that you have. Dr. Garth Davis is not a hippie. Dr. Garth Davis is an obesity and weight loss expert, and he says, I'm not biased because I'm a vegan. I am vegan because after extensive research, I've learnt that besides being the most ethical decision, a plant-based diet is the best for my health and the health of the environment. The biggest surprise for me, says Anthony Lim, is I've been observing in my patients who have adopted a whole foods plant-based diet, is that they have not just been able to just control or manage, but reverse their chronic illnesses while coming off their medication. That's radical and that's revolutionary. Absolutely it is. These two guys are brilliant. We get to see our patients get better. We get to see our patients do so well. I'm going to play a little video now for you from a guy called Dr. John McDougall, who will talk to you about the defense of the potato.
Hello, I'm Dr. John McDougall. Recently, the potato has been maligned. The USDA has restricted starches for kids in school. The WIC program has excluded potatoes from what people can buy. And there was a recent article in the New England Journal of Medicine that told us the potatoes were fattening. Not just French fries, not just potato chips, but plain potatoes are fattening. If you go through the data in that article, you'll see that's really not the case. But does it make sense to you that the lowly potato is the cause of obesity in America and Europe? It doesn't make any sense to me, particularly since a potato is so low in calories. 150 calories for a large potato, 1,500 calories a day. That's, 10 potatoes. That's a lot of eating. Plus, consider the fact that throughout human history, the potato has served as the pillars of nutrition for people. It's made the difference as to whether civilizations have survived or perished, like those people in the Andes of South America, or in Western Europe after the 1500s. The potato has played a key role in the health of people. In Ireland, when they introduced the potato, the population doubled in size in 40 years. The potato has saved many lives, individually as well as civilizations. But it's been maligned now, and I really don't understand why. But you need to understand that the potato is one of the healthiest foods that we can possibly eat. As a matter of fact, people can live on potatoes and water alone. There was a recent experiment by a fella, you may have read about it on the internet, where he went on an all-potato diet. He was so upset about the fact that people were bad-mouthing potatoes. So he went on an all-potato diet. He lost about 35 pounds, dropped his cholesterol, and thrived over 2 months. He thought this was an original experiment. It wasn't. This was done originally in the 1920s. A man and a woman were placed on an all-potato diet by a Dr. Kahn, and he published it in the research in 1928. And this man and a woman, age 25 for the man, 28 for the woman, they lived for 6 months on basically potatoes and water alone, and they thrived, and they liked their diet. So don't put up with this nonsense. The potato is one of the healthiest, most trimming, energetic, and muscle-building foods that you can eat. I'm Dr. John McDougall.
Okay, an excellent video, and I will encourage you guys to go and read and watch more of Dr. John McDougall's videos. He's an amazing physician. He certainly was a huge influence for me, and a brilliant man. He's been able to see so many people get well. What an absolute honour. So what do I prescribe, guys? Well, let's talk about a fictional patient, John Smith, who's a patient of mine. He lives on High Sugar Avenue in Diabetesville in Victoria. And he eats lots of delicious whole foods from now on, 3 times a day when required. For breakfast, he has a tofu curry scramble with mushrooms and onions, and waits 30 minutes and can have a turmeric latte if he likes. For lunchtime, if his elevated sugars persists, he consumes 1 or 2 warm Buddha bowls full of grains, falafel, sauerkraut and spinach. At night, he has a hearty bowl of chickpea and onion curries and a vegetable stir fry over brown rice. I like to prescribe food for my patients because it works. I don't have faith that medication is going to save them, but I have faith that that will. What do I find? Well, I find a couple of things, and even as I said to you, this is not billions of years ago, this is only last week or 2 ago. On a nutritional review, my patient came in. Her home beer cells have been excellent. She now had lost, since March, almost 15 kilograms of weight. She'd weighed now 101, she'd lost further 4.5 since her last appointment with me. Her blood pressure was 125 on 85. That's the figure that I would see on patients with their high blood pressure tablets. With their tablets. Yet I said to her, your blood pressure is fantastic. We've ceased your blood pressure tablets. We're going to see how it all goes. Ceased her metformin, which is her diabetic medication. Now on no meds. I'd stopped her metformin, her diabetic tablet, about 3 months prior to her coming and seeing me 2 weeks ago. And I said to her, please do your home BSLs for me. I want to see if we're winning. That is, I want to see what your blood sugar level's like. I want to see how many people are running around the hallways outside. And that is the kind of level that a healthy human being has. It's wishful thinking to, maybe it's a bit too dramatic to say this, but I think it's wishful thinking to think that if you have a type 2 diabetic who's not looking after their diet and you have them on powerful medication, to even think that you could get that result, even with medication. I don't see it. And I've got further proof. Here's another patient. Look at this. The plant-based power. Type 2 diabetes is treated with nutrition. This patient, in August of 16, was diagnosed with diabetes. Don't worry about those figures so much so. Just see the fact that it's 6.5, 6.4, and it drops down to 5.7. There's a significance there. This patient was commenced on tablets. A month or 2 later, commenced on further tablets in 17, and then comes and sees me at the start of 18. I took her off all her medication, popped her on a whole food plant-based diet, and we normalised her sugars. If a patient walked in and had those sugars with me, I don't call that diabetic. That still has an H because it's right at the high end of normal, okay? But that is power. That is without medication. That is a patient without diabetes. And this patient was on a very slippery slope. A slippery slope towards further inflammation in her vessels, remember from the slides before, and was on a slippery slope towards amputations, towards heart disease, towards stroke, and she was only in her early 40s. And now we've been able to derail that and send her on a trajectory towards healthy life. I'm able to go to my past medical history, that thing I talked to you about at the start. I'm able to go to my past medical history and cross off their conditions. I can't stop her Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an immune attack on the thyroid, but that's under control. I can now, I didn't cross it, I should have, I can now cross her hypertension, her high blood pressure. I can cross her type 2 diabetes. She sleeps beautifully. She was told, oh, you're going to need a CPAP machine. You have to go buy a CPAP machine, sleep with this thing in your nostrils, and that's the only way you can sleep. She doesn't need that. She says to me, I was told I have to go see a psychologist. She was seeing a psychologist when I first saw her. A psychologist wanted to talk about her childhood and why are you eating? Are you emotionally eating? What is it that you're wanting to achieve in life? And I said, it's all garbage. You're just hungry. You're eating bad food because you're not eating the right food. And you're getting to 10 o'clock in the morning and you're snacking on foods because you're eating a lettuce leaf for breakfast. I put her on a big bowl of mashed potato, corn and pumpkin in the morning. I said, that's your breakfast, with a bit of tofu curry scramble if you like, and it worked. She got to 1 o'clock in the afternoon before she'd say, I feel like I'm hungry now, I feel like I can eat. Whereas in the past she'd get to 9:30 and go, I'm so hungry, I've got to get stuck into all that dip. I've got to get stuck into all those bad foods. Now we've given her the whole foods containing lots of fibre and nutrition, and she thrives. And I can do that, which is awesome. So, we talked today, we end the talk. We've talked today about the Western diet. It's composed of animal foods and it's processed food, and it is killing us. It doesn't matter how people want to argue it, it's killing us. It's food poisoning. Nutrition is an underutilized tool for health professionals, but it's also an underutilized tool for the community. A whole foods plant-based diet represents the best way to reverse this and to thrive. I want you to Google, please, a couple of people when you get home. Dr. John McDougall, you just heard from. Brilliant physician. He has nothing to gain by you watching his videos. I have nothing to gain by you listening to the talk today. We're not selling anything. We're only selling the fact that we've seen something remarkable. We have to shout it. I'll have this up on another slide in a second. Dr. Michael Clapper, the gentleman who says, it's the food, it's always been the food. Dr. Esselstyn, who told you about the vessels and reversing heart disease. The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine is a lobby group based in Washington, and they help to not only affect how medical students are trained, but also to affect how the senators and congressmen in the United States go about forming health policy. Wonderful group, which I'm a member. Plant-Based News is a wonderful initiative out of London, and Plant-Based News has a lot of information on their site, a lot of up-to-date videos, wonderful information for you about living well and living healthy and happy. And on that note, I will say a very, very big thank you to you all, and it's been a pleasure to speak to you. I'm happy to take questions, or whatever questions you have, please feel free to ask me, and on that note, I'll say bon appetit. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Could we get the sausage roll recipe, please?
Oh, you could. I'm very happy to send that to you. No, absolutely. And I will really thrash home that point. I couldn't cook to save me. And to think that I'm doing that, even my mum is shocked when I come home and I start making vegan lasagnas. Or I made, for my partner the other night, a spinach, like spanakopita dish, but it was a spinach pie with like a cheesy sauce. And the cheese I used, a bit of cashew nuts and apple cider vinegar and tofu and lemon juice to get that cheesy flavour. It's so wonderful, it's so easy. So I'll definitely happy to share that recipe with you.
With the potatoes, you said you can fry them, you can bake them, you can boil them. What's the preferred way?
Yeah, that's a really great question. See, the problem with when we fry our food is that we are frying in lots of oil, and we're using much more than a teaspoon of olive oil. So all the fat that's in the olive and in those 40 olives is exemplified, and that comes with the potato. So all that fat comes with the potato. Yes, we get the carbohydrate and so forth, but remember that fat that's on the oil goes straight into the cell. Now, I'm not perfect. I will have sometimes oil in my food. I can't avoid it. But if I can, I desperately don't cook with it. It's not in my kitchen. We don't have it in our house. So it's trying to avoid the use of oil, especially on salads. Taste the natural food that goes with it. I think the best way to have potatoes, honestly, my favorite is to have it as mash. So I chop them up into cubes, I boil them, I'll either strain them and just let them be, or I mash them a little bit, or I put them into the fridge and I let them cool. And the ratio of the amount of sugar that I'm able to digest versus I can't digest actually lowers. And so overnight, when you have cold potatoes and you have them in the morning, and I think it's an awesome, awesome breakfast, is I actually find there's more fibre in that food. It's a healthy way. And your taste buds will change. Your taste buds will start to thrive for this kind of food. Okay, so avoiding the oil is so important. On my website, livinglongertoday.com, I do have a guide, a PDF, a 10, 12-page guide. Please download it. It's yours. It summarises everything I've just said to you today with a little bit of more extra information for you. And it talks about oil and salt and so forth. livinglongertoday.com. Okay. Answers your question?
Yep.
Yep.
Another disease, cancer. Wasn't that long ago, people could smoke, no problem, and now, as you know, it causes cancer. Now you see on TV, don't drink sugary drinks, that causes cancer. So what foods, I'm assuming that's run by the medical industry, is that you should be not consuming and,
yeah, well, that's right. So because of our data collection capacity these days and what we have access to, we know what causes cancer. We know that smoking is as common, as well aligned with lung cancer as is animal foods like red meat and lamb and chicken, as it's associated with rectal cancer, bowel cancer. Okay? We know that the link is there. We know that these foods drive the process of cancer growth. And why do they do that? It's because a lot of the animal products have so many hormones and added fats and added growth factors, and they wash over our cells. I hate dairy, and as a vegan it's awful to say this, but if you had to choose one, I'd rather you eat meat than drink dairy. I think dairy is the most toxic, evil substance on the planet, and I just would annihilate it with a gun if I saw it. It is evil, evil, evil stuff. There is a very, very, very good reason why urologists will say to their prostate post-cancer surgery patients with prostate cancer, don't touch dairy. There's a reason why people who've undergone breast cancer surgery are told, don't drink. My father was a breast cancer surgeon. He was a cancer surgeon generally for bowel cancer and breast surgery, but he would tell every single one of his patients, don't touch dairy. It is full of hormones, it is full of growth factors, it is full of fats. And I don't want those markers washing over the hormone-sensitive tissues, the breast, the ovary, the prostate. I don't want them washing over those cells and saying, grow, 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 grow. Dairy, cow's milk, is designed for one reason. It's designed to take a little baby beautiful calf, and grow it into this big 400 kilogram cow, and to do that within about a year or two. So therefore, of course, all the stuff that's in the cow's milk is telling that baby cow, grow, 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 grow. But I don't want to, at my age, have my cells being told, grow, 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 grow. Because what is grow, 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 grow? It is cancer. It is cells replicating out of control. Dairy is deadly. Dairy is dangerous. I don't care what study someone wants to come up with. I've annihilated every study that's ever been put before me by a nutritionist or a dietitian saying dairy is healthy. They're fake. They're not supportive. The dairy industry have tried to do a lot of studies on dairy, and a new thing that's come out over the last 10, 15 years in medicine is that you have to publish generally your results. And a lot of the time the dairy industry weren't publishing the results because they could never get a study which showed dairy was positive. I don't put osteoporosis patients on dairy. I think it's the worst thing I could ever do is give patients who have got bone disease dairy, because we know that dairy has an acidic aspect on the body and acidic aspect on driving the process of bone disease. I put them on whole foods plant-based diet, I give them their vitamin D, get them to do exercise, which is really powerful for bone strength, but I tell them to ban dairy. And that's what the science says. And we know that. We know that's what the evidence is. Don McDougall has a really great video on the dangers of dairy, and he talks about the studies. He doesn't talk about fairy tale medicine. He doesn't talk about, we think it does this, we think it does that. He talks about the studies, and just like what I've done today, he talks about the science. So dairy is bad. Any other questions, guys? Yeah, shoot.
Fruits, when they're ripen, they're full of sugar. Like you have a pear, it's not ripe, it's great, and it's full of sugar. Is that something you should be consuming?
100%, because it just tastes better. 100%. So when you're having an apricot or you're having a pear that's ripened, you're having sugar. But what are you also having? You're also having those antioxidants because the pear was exposed to the sun. You're having the fiber. You're having the protein. You're having everything else that was in that pear. And so when you're consuming the orange, for example, you are consuming the orange, you're biting, you're chomping down on it. That actually sends signals to the body, just like chewing gum. Why does chewing gum suppress our appetite? It's because we chew, it sends a chemical, it sends a message to the brain, hey, we're chewing, we must have a lot of food coming your way, so suppress the appetite and see what happens. That's what the brain thinks. So when we chew, we actually help to, I guess, foster a bit of an appetite suppressant. But you chew, you use up energy, you swallow, and then you're digesting the sugar, but not only the sugar, the fiber and everything else that goes with it. Now, you can handle maybe 3 or 4 oranges. John McDougall talked about 10 potatoes a day. When I went on my all-potato diet in early 15, for about 3 or 4 weeks, I ate nothing but boiled potatoes. I loved it, but I would go through probably 10 to 12 potatoes at the most per day. I would have to consume, I calculated, about 45 potatoes before there was so much sugar in my body it would slowly be converted to fat. And it would only be about 250 grams over a couple of months. 45 potatoes, I couldn't consume more than 10. I was full. So when you're consuming an orange, you can consume 2 or 3 oranges, but if you want to drink juice, you'll be consuming 10. And what you're consuming is just the sugar of 10 juices, which is too much for the body. It's this onslaught of sudden sugar. It's not healthy. So yes, any fruits are fine. Obviously, you want to get a fruit that's ripe if you can. Okay, but it certainly is safe. The ripest fruit on the planet, munch into it.
For somebody who gets regular checkups, has good cholesterol, no health problems, nothing in their family background that would indicate cancer or diabetes, enjoys a barbecue on the weekends, as a hypothetical person, of course, and a glass of wine.
Here's one we prepared earlier, right? Yeah.
Is there any reason why that person should change their diet, what would be so radically, given that there's no obvious reason that there's a danger there?
Well, first of all, there is an obvious reason there's a danger there, but by someone telling me that they consume barbecue meat, they are consuming carcinogens. But as I said to you, the food poisoning, it's not food poisoning that happens overnight. You don't eat something, wake up the next morning and go, oh, I ate something I shouldn't have. This is minute, this is clandestine, this seeps into its cells. And we know that the meat drives cancer. It won't drive cancer tomorrow or next week, and God willing, it will never drive it, but it does. It'll drive it in the next 10, 15, 20 years. The etiology of cancers, when someone says, I've been diagnosed with bowel cancer, I've been diagnosed with breast cancer, okay, they weren't healthy 10 minutes ago. They were having the process of cancer initiated 30 years ago. It was 1 cell, and then it became 2, and then it became 4, and it slowly grew. And it grew to the point that they said, my tummy's been a bit sore for the last year or so, and I had a bit of bleeding in my bowel, but it's not too bad, and I'll let it be, it should be okay. And they finally come and see me because they're slightly constipated, and we do a colonoscopy and we see this big mass blocking their colon. That's too late. It's spread to the rest of their body. So it's not that we have to wait, we should never be waiting until we have the symptoms. Okay? We know the science suggests and tells us very accurately that when we eat these foods, we drive our diseases. Yes, I've got patients who have had really great cholesterol, and yet I know that they've got heart disease. I know that they've got vascular disease because while the cholesterol level may be low, the process of inflammation is still going on. The process of inflammation is driving the vessel disease. We know this. There's a molecule called trimethylamine oxide, which gets produced by the liver. This is the study I was talking about before. And when we consume meat, we produce this molecule which leads to hypertension, stroke, and heart disease. So whilst people would say, I feel fine, my blood pressure is great, I'd say that there is a cauldron of low-level inflammation going on. And I always, don't like the idea of people waiting until it's too late. I always wish they came and saw me before that, before we drove that disease process to the nth degree. If we can retract that a bit and get them on a better, healthier diet where you will feel better, there's no doubt about it. It's like someone who drinks a bottle of wine a day and says, I feel fine. But when they stop drinking, they will feel better. You will feel better on a whole foods, plant-based diet. And the science supports that you will be adding years of quality life, but also years to your life. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah.
What about eggs? Eggs are okay?
No, eggs are as bad as dairy. Okay, so eggs are awful. Eggs are, if you actually think what they are the period of another animal. Another animal is having a period, and we happen to just be chewing and munching on that and popping it into our saucepan. For some reason, human beings have no issue eating the periods of chickens, yet if I said to you, have the period of your next door neighbour, they'd say, that's disgusting, how can you say something like that? Yet, okay, we laugh about it and we say, oh, that's silly, but if you actually think about it, when you have dairy milk, you are taking the breast milk of another bovine animal and drinking that. You are breaking the periods of another animal into a pan, frying it and consuming that. You're consuming fat, saturated fat. You're consuming high levels of protein, okay? And you're consuming a type of protein that has a nasty effect on the kidneys and the liver, okay? We know that there are studies which have shown that consuming 2 or 3 eggs in your meals per week is akin to smoking 10 cigarettes a week in terms of its disease-causing process. Okay. Again, they're high in protein, and so they may thin you. People can say, oh, I live on 10, 20 eggs a week, I feel fantastic. They may thin you, but they are driving disease. There is a cost to all this. There is a huge cost. It is not as simple as just saying, I'm going to eat this food, I feel fantastic, there are no side effects. Nature and the body have a way of getting you back. And that's the beautiful thing about this diet. I'm telling you about a diet that doesn't require exercise, doesn't require any other supplementations, doesn't require anything other than you eating well and eating as much as you want. And you don't have to worry about any nasty side effects. Eggs aren't good.
Two questions. One, what happens to infants? Like, what if a mother cannot produce milk? And what would you recommend in that case?
So there's supplements. I mean there's obviously soy-based and non-animal or non-dairy-based milk formulas that they can use. And I have quite a few patients who, as soon as they've been, their children have been born, they pop them onto plant-based vegan diets as they've been able to transition over onto solid foods, and they have that. So the capacity is there.
Okay. And what would you recommend a children's diet as gone vegan?
Exactly what I talked about. As long as they eat as much as they want and they're happy and they're healthy. But, you know, I had a patient yesterday who came in with her beautiful little girl, 13-month-old girl. She said, look, you know, she's on a vegan diet, but she's producing lots of bowel actions. Should I be concerned? And I said, look at her. She's happy, she's pink, she's warm, she's well perfused, she's engaging, she's smiling, she's babbling, she wants to crawl around the room. She's a happy child. Is she meeting her growth milestones? Yes. Is she meeting her weight milestones? Is she gaining weight? Yes. You've got the perfect child. Don't change a thing. Is she upset? Is she sick? Is she distressed? Is she fatigued? Nope. Great. She's doing well. Let's not change one single thing. So it's amazing that even consuming these foods, children will thrive on them. Okay. So look, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. The reality is the access to processed foods wasn't where it was, say, 100, 200, 300 years ago, yet human beings survived. Human beings thrived. They couldn't go down to their local butcher and get steak every night. They couldn't go and get milk. They just couldn't do that. It wasn't viable. Farming wasn't where it was at, say, 200, 300 years ago compared to today. Okay, so we were a plant-based nation, also plant-based species, and we thrived on that food. We just don't need it. I'd love for someone to come and tell me the evidence that says people who are on a plant-based diet from infancy will do poorly. They just don't. There's not one case of that ever happening. Dr. Benjamin Spock, SPOK, was a wonderful, a very noted author and pediatrician, and he wrote the Bible on how to raise children. And he said before he died, in his last couple of copies of his versions of his book, the best diet for children is a plant-based diet. Any other questions, guys?
Yogurt is yogurt.
No, see, yogurt is just dairy. Dairy is dairy. It's another form. We can curdle the dairy to make yogurt. We can freeze it to make ice cream. We can do a whole host of things, but it doesn't change what it is. Why do we like yogurt? Yogurt's sour. It's salty. It has that sour taste. We like that. Okay? We thrive on that. Okay? But it's not healthy. Now, you can buy vegan forms of cheese. You can buy vegan forms of yogurt. I don't think it's nice. It's just not as healthy anyway. The vegan cheese, for example, that you buy is full of coconut oil. So it's full of huge amounts of fat, of oil. It's not healthy. So it's not a case of me saying to you, so I'm not showing you vegan burgers with vegan cheese and that kind of thing. That's just as bad as consuming animal products, okay, from a health perspective. Ethically, it's probably better, but it's not as good as just as bad health-wise. But when we consume the whole foods, then we're doing ourselves a favour. And I don't miss yogurt, I don't miss cheese, I don't miss any of that kind of stuff. Part of it, I must admit, is because of the ethical aspects, which pushed me into veganism 3 or 4 years ago. And then that's when I found these guys online, and I thought, wow, far out, there's actually evidence that this will help me. And so I guess there's an ethical aspect with me saying I don't miss it for that reason. But it's also amazing how when I will smell meat being cooked, or I will smell cheese, I just think it's the most disgusting thing. My taste buds and my nose have readjusted to it. I used to love Swiss cheese. I used to love going to the Vic Market and buying cheese in the cheese section that we have here in Victoria, the Victorian Market. I can't go in that place anymore. It absolutely reeks, and nothing's changed except my taste buds are saying you're consuming the fermented, going off, disgusting byproduct of a mammal. So that's the reality, that's the facts. Okay, so we try and push more towards the whole foods. Yes, sir.
Fish.
So fish falls, I guess, into the animal products, and why is fish bad? Well, why, first of all, are we told that fish is good? We're told fish is good because of omega-3. That's where we get our fat from. We're told milk is good, cow's milk, because we get calcium. We're told we should go and have a big steak and a barbecue because that's where we get our, our iron from. Yet we get all those nutrients from the same place the animals get them, from the plants. The fish swims along, munches on the algae, munches on the seaweed. The omega-3, which is only found in plants, gets absorbed into the fish, and then we consume the fish. What a waste. Just go straight to the plants, get it from the plants. Fish are swimming around in a toxic ocean, a cesspool of waste, of filth. They are high in mercury. There is a mild association, I haven't read much data on it, there's a mild association with toxicity and Parkinson's disease, okay, especially of metal toxicity. Fish contain massive amounts of cholesterol and saturated fat. Cholesterol is in every single animal product. It's not in plant-based foods. You are not consuming any cholesterol if you consume plant-based foods. Okay? When you consume animal products, you are consuming cholesterol-saturated fat. You are getting, yes, you're getting a bit of iron, but unfortunately you are getting all this other junk with it. Why would I want to buy a car that comes with sand in the engine, that comes with torn seats? That doesn't make sense. I just want to get something that works properly. I don't want to have anything that's endangering myself. I don't drive a car with a busted seatbelt or a non-functional airbag, and that's what we're doing when we consume animal products, whether it's fish, chicken, lamb, etc. Yeah?
You mentioned that you weren't taught this in medical school, and even like now you're taught, well, it used to be the food pyramid, but now it's the plate. You're taught to consume animals and dairy and all of that, so why are they teaching us to do this stuff? And like in medical school you weren't taught this, why is it?
Yeah, the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture and Industry back in the 40s and 50s were the ones who were instrumental in designing the food pyramid that we all became associated with. Thus there was the reliance on having animal products in that food pyramid. And as we migrated further forth, it became just normalised, that's what we ate. And it was convenient to be able to say, if you need iron in your body, if you need omega-3, eat fish. If you need iron, eat this. And dairy is fantastic because it's got lots of calcium, and calcium is responsible for strong, healthy bones. But if you go to the dairy website of Australia, they make two statements that they are not linked. The first statement is that calcium is found in dairy products. Statement number two, calcium is required for strong, healthy bones. Through a process of association, we feel that, okay, therefore, if I want strong, healthy bones, I must have to consume dairy. There is not one scrap of evidence that consuming dairy is healthy for healthy bones. In fact, it's the opposite, okay? So we certainly have a reliance on this food. Now, I wasn't taught this in medical school, not because it's a big global conspiracy or anything, it's just that because I had 6 years. I took a year off extra, as I said, at the Alfred to do a research thesis on cellular respiration, but I had 6 years to learn everything that I need to know now. I graduated in 2006, and the medical students that are going through today probably have to know about 80% more than what I knew, going through in terms of medicine and science and so forth. It's very hard to find the time to teach this, but I'm hoping in the future I can get back into the university and teach this. But it's not going to come from doctors. The change is going to be made from you guys. And it's going to be made from people like Michael and others who are embracing this and saying, I want people to come and speak about it. And for you guys to go home and do your own research. I'm not going to sell your program. I'm not making any money out of this. I just want to see you guys healthy. I want you guys to be able to go to your doctor and have the doctor cross off those conditions. Those conditions which we know will shorten your life, that they will destroy your life. You'll lose your independence. You'll lose your safety and your security and your happiness. You can have them annihilated. So the food pyramid has slightly changed. Certainly in the United States, in the plate that they talk about, they've now removed the word meat and changed it with protein. Okay, and that's quite significant because what that means is that they are acknowledging that you can get protein from plants. It doesn't necessarily have to be from animal-based products. That's the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and Neil Bernard, who heads it, who's been instrumental in pushing that through. There's a lot of bureaucracy in getting that, and a lot of other cofactors such as government influence and economy that plays a role here. But I can only speak from the science, and I can only speak from the clinical aspect of what I see as a doctor, and they can't, but I can, and this works, and that doesn't. Do you have another question, sir?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, there's a book that came out a while ago called Eat right for your blood type? I don't know if you've done it.
Complete
Look, I don't. I know of it. I didn't bother even and looking at it. It got debunked immediately by the major medical groups, and I read a blog on it. There's no evidence that anything like that happens. I mean, the idea that you would have to eat certain foods that would influence what type of blood cell you have, it's completely two different concepts. The blood type you have is a completely different thing. It's about your marker, it's your immune system, it's how you're dealing with the rest of your body, and it's based on your family lineage and that kind of thing. It's got nothing to do with your diet. The stupidity of people should, don't have this particular fruit because you're type A, but then have this particular fruit because you're B positive. Silly. There's just never any evidence. Things like that I haven't looked at much because it's about as silly as someone saying the earth is flat. Okay? I don't have time to argue that.
We're glad we didn't have you last year. Just to let you in, there was a member of the group who believed the earth was flat.
Okay. I wish they were here. I love challenging them. I love physics, and I recently was at Michio Kaku's lecture and Brian Cox's last year, and if I hadn't been a doctor, I would have become a physicist. I love science and I love physics, and actually a couple of years ago I thought about going back into Melbourne Uni to do a physics degree. I got accepted and I decided to stay on as a GP. But I love science, and I'm happy to challenge anyone who wants to say that kind of stuff. Okay, yes, sir.
Besides obvious things like poisonous plants and things like that, are there any plants or vegetables or fruit that we should probably avoid?
Look, from a fruits perspective, I don't know of any. Vegetables, I don't know of any. I guess some plants, some fungi aspects might be the mushrooms, certain mushrooms you don't, but your white-button mushrooms, your shiitake mushrooms, that anything you're buying in the store should be fine. There is some evidence, believe it or not, I didn't believe it until I read the evidence, that having organic, whole food, stuff that you might buy in organic groceries are better and healthier for you. Yes, there is some evidence to suggest that. But I tell you what, if it's going to make you say, look, I don't want to go shop at an organic shop, but I'm happy to go to Coles and buy my food. If that's what's going to get you over the line, go to Coles. I go buy all my food from Coles. So certainly there's a bit of benefit with organic if you can. If you can't afford it, just stick with the normal supermarket food. And anything you buy in the supermarket is considered to be 100% safe. And I can't think of any major things you should avoid. Yes, mate?
I know you mentioned earlier that you want to avoid fish because of the mercury and all, and dirty seas. But
mainly the cholesterol and saturated fat, but yeah.
You mentioned that the omegas and plants. But if we're avoiding mercury and stuff in fish, shouldn't we also be avoiding anything else that's dirty in the sea, like in the plants?
Certainly the plants don't absorb anywhere near the mercury levels that the fish do. So the fish have the water washing through them, and it gets absorbed very, very rapidly into the muscle cells. So it's like a magnet for these kind of toxins, whereas the plant-based algae don't. And you are right, there is some degree to suggest that some of the plant-based products, are having layers of fuel dumped on top of them and that kind of thing. Yeah. So the whole ocean itself is quite dirty. The fish ecosystem is so important though. We need the fish, just like we need the bees, for example, to pollinate the plants. We need the fish out there to maintain the cleanliness of the ocean, and oyster shells, for example, to clean the ocean and so forth. So when we remove that, like I said before, we are having a side effect where you're going to have a delayed impact somewhere down the line. But yeah, it's mainly the saturated fat and the cholesterol that comes with fish. And the high protein content. The high protein drives that disease process. Yes, mate?
For those who are going to the gym every day and doing vigorous and physical activity every day and in the construction industry and all that, should they be eating a different set of plant-based food?
No, some of the strongest weightlifters in the world, and you only have to Google, vegan bodybuilders, and these guys are ripped. They are different to the type of bodybuilder that you would see. They are thinner, but they are not thinner in a weaker sense. They just seem much more toned because they don't have that massive growth impact from all the other bad animal products. They are healthy, they are fit, they are active. I think the world's strongest man at the moment is a vegan, for example, and he wouldn't dare go near meat. And he's not vegan, I think, because of ethical reasons. He's vegan because he wants to be the strongest man in the world. And he knows as soon as he eats meat or he eats other kinds of high protein diets, his fitness and his strength capacity will diminish. That's interesting. So, no, the answer is, as long as you're consuming the foods I've just talked about there, and you're going and getting all those fresh green leafy vegetables, having the pumpkin potatoes, just like John McDougall says, you can do anything you want. It's great.
But sometimes it's a bit of a misconception. There's the biggest bodybuilders out there who are vegan end up always admitting they use hormone boosters.
I don't know of any who do that. I mean, you may have. I mean, I don't know. You may have come across them who've done that, but
it's always coming up. It's always
it may well be. It may well be, but it wouldn't be the hormone boosters that are producing who they are. It's certainly some effect, the fact that they're doing well. And you must admit, I probably think most people would be using some kind of supplement anyway. Yeah, that's right. But I can't comment on someone specifically. But certainly, there are very, very healthy individuals out there who run marathons, who are plant-based, and who do really, really well. Yes, mate.
About that high purine plants, vegetables.
Yeah, some of the high purine plants, you mean towards gout? Is it towards causing gout and so forth? Yeah. So purine is part of the cell system, part of the DNA, and it's a molecule which we think drives the inflammatory process to gout, which is a joint disease. And there are some you're right, there are some high purine plants, but you just avoid them. Most people don't. Most people have gout triggered by something earlier. It's usually not triggered by food, it's triggered by alcohol, it's triggered by some other causation factor which starts the process. And then the gout process starts after that. It's quite a specific topic.
Like the mushroom and the spinach.
That doesn't cause no gout. I mean, I know there are some plants, but not those ones. They're very healthy. They have good purines in them. They're happy. We just don't want the diet to be too high in those foods. So it's more liver, like cod liver and a few other things, that animal-based products that are high in purines that we worry about. Yeah. Yes.
What about skin conditions and food allergies?
Oh yeah, look, that's thanks for reminding me. I've had massive wins with like 3 or 4 or 5-year-olds who've come in, and mum wants a new referral to the gastroenterologist because little Billy has got chronic diarrhea, he's not gaining weight, and there's massive allergies to everything on the planet. I said, have you tried a dairy-free diet? Yeah, we tried that for a week, he didn't get better. And I said, well, did you try the yogurt though? Did you get rid of the ice cream? Did you get rid of the pasta sauces? Were you putting in the pre-made pasta sauces with dairy in it? Oh, no, we didn't do that. And they've come back, and they've wanted to bring me presents when they come back because they're so happy. He's happy, they're thriving. It's amazing how when we annihilate dairy and egg from our diet, some people do really well. Acne is a huge thing as well. A lot of people who have got skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis, these are inflammatory conditions in the skin. What they end up having is that there's an etiology, a cause for it. Now, sometimes it's not found, sometimes it's genetic, sometimes it's a cause that we can't treat successfully without using high-dose steroids or medication. But for some people, popping them onto a new, wonderful diet, it annihilates them, and it gives them their life back. And again, I've seen this so often now. I guess I tell people about them, they go, wow, that's impressive, but I'm just so used to it now. But you're right, there's huge, huge implications with...
Does that help you improve hay fever and asthma?
Yeah, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. 100%. Especially when people get rid of dairy, they find they don't get rhinitis, which is an inflammatory condition of the nose. They don't get rhinitis where they get watery nose and blocked nose and congestion. They just feel so much better. And you know what? If it's congesting our noses, if it's causing our skin to sometimes become inflamed, that has to be a wake-up call that it can't be that healthy for us. If it's having this effect, maybe not on everyone, but if it's having an effect on such a significant area of the population who are dairy or lactose intolerant, if it's congesting our noses, it has to be something wrong with it. It can't be that healthy. Find me one problem with lettuce. Find me someone who says every time I munch on a big bowl of mashed potato, I break out in a skin condition, I get all hay fever. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen.
What about celiacs, like the gluten?
Yeah, that's something different. I mean, celiac disease is 1% of the population. It's due to an intolerance or an inability of the body to correctly digest a moiety or a combination of 2 different types of proteins. And it's not as common as what people think. People will consume a celiac diet thinking it's healthy. If you can consume wheat and rye and barley and that kind of thing, do it. It's healthy, it has a lot of stuff in it. If you can't because you're celiac, well then you just have to avoid it. It's what it is. But it's an autoimmune condition. It's a condition separate. I don't think it can be helped by going on a vegan diet, to be honest with you. I think it is what it is. But people can certainly consume certain foods and still be very healthy and happy.
But gluten-free diet is not necessarily a healthier diet.
No, it's not. In fact, it's the opposite. Okay, it's like those who have gone on the FODMAPs diet. The FODMAPs diet was developed here at Monash University in Victoria, and in fact, the surgeons who developed the diet, I was at a dinner with once, and he said to me, "I wish I'd never invented that goddamn diet because everyone goes on it thinking it's the best thing since sliced bread, and it's not. It's very restrictive. The FODMAPs diet is those sugars, okay, oligosaccharides, fructose, and so forth. FODMAPs, disaccharide D. It's designed to say these are the types of sugars that you shouldn't eat. Sugars that are found in this food, sugars that are found in that food. But by restricting your diet, you're left with not a lot you can eat. It's a very restrictive diet, and therefore you're missing out on all the wonderful, wonderful benefits that go in the other foods. I'm doing FODMAPs, I'm doing Atkins, I'm doing this. You are setting yourself up for disaster. Okay? If you need it, go for it. If it's what saves you, remember, if it's what makes you happy, if it's what is someone who has got legitimate irritable bowel syndrome and inflammatory bowel diseases where they need to be on a FODMAPs diet, that's great. Put them on a FODMAPs diet because it will give them some sense of relief and it will help them. But if you don't need to be on it, don't be on it. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So can you get B12 any other way than...
No, it's a really good point. So I should have talked about that. The only thing that you can't get with the vegan diet is B12. Vitamin B12 is produced by bacteria called cyanobacterium. They live in the first 10 centimetres of the soil. And in the olden days, we'd go and get our tomatoes and our potatoes and all our stuff from the ground. They have a bit of dirt on it. It would seep its way into our body and then we absorb the B12, the vitamin B12. We chlorinate and wash and pulverise our food these days, so by the time we get it from the supermarket, we don't have any B12 on it. So every 3 months I just get a little B12 injection and my B12 levels are fine. That's the only thing. You can't get it from anywhere else except from the soil. Just because we just wash and chlorinate our food so much these days, we lose that. Cows are munching on the soil, chickens and roosters are munching on the grass and the grains, and that's how they get their B12. And it's why people who consume an animal-based diet don't need B12. Nothing special about animals. Animals are getting it from the same source that I used to get it from the ground. That's all.
Are there any vegetables that you rather eat raw or it needs to be baked the other way around?
I think just potatoes. There's a lot of raw vegans out there. Every so often I'll do a raw vegan diet. So I'll go for about 6, 7, 8 days just eating raw foods. And I'll eat, mushrooms and zucchinis and all these great, wonderful foods. I eat them raw. And I think it's the healthiest diet on the planet. Dr. Clapper will sometimes use that at his centre in America. And as long as you eat enough food, because it's very calorie dilute, you need to be eating lots and lots of food, but it is revolutionary. I've never felt so good in my life when I've been on that kind of diet. There's very healthy foods out there. But you know what, if you just want to live on a diet of mashed potatoes for 1 year, you can do it. One of my great friends, Andrew Taylor, did that. Only 2 years ago, he ate potatoes the entire year as a way to change his life, and he lost massive amounts of weight. His blood profiles were brilliant, and he did it for 365 days, just living on potatoes. And that was mashed potato. So you can just live on whatever types of starch that you like. Cook it, try and avoid the oil as much as possible.
So after gardening, you don't have to wash your hands.
That's right. Good man. That's it. Well done. Get the B12 into you. That's it.
And like injections as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Isn't it the whole idea to avoid injections like that?
Yeah, you can take sprays, you can get tablets. I used to take a tablet, but I just can't be bothered, so I just get an injection
Or a supplement?
Yeah, a little tablet or supplement. No. Yeah, it's fine.
There's some fortified.
There's fortified foods that have B12 in it, like nutritional yeast has B12 in it. Some types of vegan milks have B12 in it. B12 takes a long time to go down. Even if I hadn't been consuming B12 and been vegan since 15, my B12 levels will probably start to be dwindling a little bit now. Nothing causing me any clinical condition. But it takes a long time for you to lose a lot of B12. But I'm at work, I have in my diary, and every 3 months I'll just go to the nurse at work and say, off you go. And we do it.
It gets back up.
Hey? It just maintains it. It just maintains the level for me every 3 or 4 months. Just because I can't bother putting a tablet in my mouth every day.
Let's say for the general population it's like that, what would happen in the long run in that case? If Will it just get lower and lower as you grow older? Or?
Generally, the general population of B12 levels decrease, generally because your intake and your healthy food intake actually decreases. And so not uncommon for so there's quite a few elderly people to be on routine B12 injections, and they're off eating meat, they're off eating everything they can. But I think it's because also there's a small inflammatory process going on in the bowel, and over time they just don't have that capacity to absorb things as readily as they used to be. Any other questions? All right, well look, on that note, I'll let you guys get back to your talk. I really thank you for paying attention. I think for some of you may agree with it, some of you may not agree with it, but I do hope that you will have a look at these guys for me. They are wonderful people, and I have nothing to sell to you. I just want you guys to get healthy and well. I want you to derive the same benefits that I have, and you all deserve to have a wonderful, healthy, happy, long life, and I wish you well. Thank you so much.